Let's talk about a feeling. You know the one. It's that heavy, quiet feeling that settles in when you've been trying and trying and trying and nothing seems to change. It's that little voice in your head that whispers, "Why even bother?" Now, it's so easy to mistake that for being lazy or burned out or, I don't know, some kind of personal failure. But it's none of those things. It's actually a well-known psychological trap, a pattern that any of us can fall into. Today, we're going to give that feeling a name, because by understanding it, we can start to find our way out.
Just take a second and really think about that. Has there been a time where you felt this in your bones? Maybe it was a job where you poured everything you had into it, hoping for that promotion or even just a little recognition, but you just kept getting passed over. Or maybe a relationship where you tried so hard to communicate, to fix things, to feel connected, but it was like talking to a brick wall. It feels like you're on a treadmill, just running as fast as you can, pouring sweat, heart pounding, you're completely exhausted, but you look up and you haven't moved an inch. That feeling of running in place, where all your effort just seems to disappear, well, it's more than just frustrating. It can really crush your spirit. It makes you question everything about yourself. And I promise you, you're not the only person who has ever felt that way. So this feeling, this profound sense of being completely stuck, like you're in emotional quicksand, it's not just a bad mode, and it's definitely not a sign of weakness. It's a real, predictable, scientifically understood state of mind. And giving it a name, that's the first step. It's the most important one, really, because you can't fight an enemy you can't see. Once we name it, we can start to figure out where it came from and, hopefully how to take its power away.
And here it is. This is the name for that feeling: learned helplessness. Now let's break this down because every single word here matters. The most important word on this slide, it's learned. This is not who you are. You were not born this way. It's something your brain learns as a response to the world around it. Think of your brain like a little scientist, always running experiments. If it runs the try really hard experiment again and again and again, and the result is always failure or didn't work, well, eventually it comes to a conclusion. And that conclusion is, what I do doesn't actually affect what happens to me. And if that's the conclusion, the most logical, energy-saving thing to do is to just stop trying. It's kind of a tragic form of self-preservation, right? Your brain's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you from the pain of failing again by convincing you not to even bother stepping into the ring. So what does this actually look like in day-to-day life? Well, it shows up as all these behaviors that we tend to slap the wrong labels on. Low motivation? That's not just laziness. It's that deep-down belief of, what's the point if it won't work anyway? Giving up super quickly? That's not a lack of persistence. It's your brain looking at the old data and saying, hey, effort is a waste of time here. Let's cut our losses. And of course, poor self-esteem follows, right? If you believe your actions don't matter, it's a tiny little jump to believing that you don't matter. Procrastination becomes your shield, a way to avoid another failure. And being passive, avoiding decisions, that's the core of it all. A belief that your choices don't even matter, so why bother making them? So how on earth did we even figure this out? Well, the story is actually pretty amazing. It wasn't discovered by psychologists who were studying people who felt stuck. Nope, it was discovered completely by accident, during a set of experiments that were supposed to be about something else entirely. And science is full of these moments, where some weird, unexpected result, something that just doesn't fit, ends up revealing a much, much deeper truth about how the mind really works. And that brings us to the story at the heart of this whole concept. And it's a story that is quite literally shocking. It's a famous experiment that honestly is a little tough to hear about by today's standards, but it completely changed how we think about control, about resilience, and even about the roots of depression. So let's step into the lab. Okay, picture this. It's the 1960s in a university lab. Two young researchers, Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer, are doing these experiments on learning. But something weird keeps happening. They notice this bizarre behavior in some of the dogs. A certain group of them, after going through one part of the experiment, were acting in a way that just didn't make sense. They were passive, almost defeated. They seemed to have just given up. It was a real puzzle, an anomaly that they knew they had to get to the bottom of. So they designed this incredibly clever three-part experiment to figure out what was going on. They had three groups of dogs. Group one was the control group. They were just put in a harness for a while and then let go. Nothing bad happened. Easy enough. Group two was the escape group. They were put in the same harness and they'd get these mild electric shocks. But, and this is the most important part, There was a little panel they could press with their nose. If they pressed it, the shock stopped immediately. So these dogs learned a really powerful lesson. This is unpleasant, but I can do something to make it stop. They learned they had control. Then there was group 3, the inescapable group. They were wired up to group 2, so they got the exact same shocks at the same time for the same length. But for them, the panel in front of them did nothing. From their point of view, the shocks just started and stopped randomly. There was no logic to it, and nothing they did made any difference. The lesson they learned was the total opposite. Pain just happens to me, and I'm completely powerless.
Now, this is the moment everything clicked. For the next phase, they took all 3 groups of dogs, one by one, and put them in something called a shuttle box. It's basically a big box with a low wall in the middle. A light would go on, signaling that in a few seconds, one side of the floor was about to be electrified. The solution was simple. Just hop over the low wall to the safe side. The dogs from group 1, the control group, they got zapped, got confused, but they scrambled over the wall pretty quickly. The dogs from group 2, the ones who had learned they had control, they figured it out almost instantly. They saw the signal and actively looked for a way out. But the dogs from group 3, what they did was just heartbreaking. When the light came on and the shock started, they just laid down. They whimpered. They just took the pain. They didn't even try to escape, even though freedom was just one tiny jump away. Their past experience had taught them such a powerful lesson in being powerless that it completely shut down their instinct to survive. And that's the key. It wasn't the shock that caused the paralysis, it was the experience of having no control. They had learned to be helpless.
It's a powerful story, isn't it? And it tells us something so fundamental, not just about dogs in a lab, but about all of us. Because our lives are our own shuttle boxes. We all face our own versions of inescapable shocks. Maybe it's a toxic job, a difficult family situation, or a chronic illness. By the way, if this is clicking for you, and if you enjoy these kinds of deep dives that connect the dots on big ideas, take a quick second to subscribe. We do this stuff all the time. Okay, now let's make that huge leap from the lab to our own minds and see how this plays out in the human experience.
Right. This is the million-dollar question. We all face tough times. We all have moments where it feels like nothing we do matters. So why do some people seem to bounce back, while others get stuck in that helpless feeling? Well, the big breakthrough after the dog experiments was realizing that it's not the bad event itself that matters most. It's the story we tell ourselves about why it happened. It's all about our interpretation. And this internal story is what psychologists call our explanatory style. Okay, look at this, because this right here is the fork in the road. Let's say 2 people get laid off. The person with a pessimistic style thinks, it's my fault. I'm just not good enough. This always happens to me, and I'll never find another job. See how that story is personal, my fault, permanent, never, and pervasive, always? That is the exact recipe for learned helplessness. Now, the person with an optimistic style goes through the exact same bad event, but tells a different story. The company had to downsize. This is a really tough situation, but it's a temporary setback. I have good skills, and I can find something new. See the difference? That story is external, the company, temporary, setback, and specific, this one situation. That one little shift in the story changes absolutely everything. So, where do these storytelling habits even come from? Well, they're often forged early in our lives. A little kid who cries and is always ignored learns, my attempts to get help don't work. Someone in an abusive relationship learns that nothing they do can stop the pain. A student who studies like crazy but still fails learns, my effort doesn't lead to success. And even something that seems positive, like overprotective parenting, can teach a kid, I can't solve my own problems. I always need someone else to fix things for me. These experiences aren't just memories. They're the data our brain uses to predict how effective we're going to be in the world. And the stakes here are really, really high. This isn't just a personality quirk. It's a major driver of serious mental health issues. I mean, learned helplessness is at the very core of so much depression. What is depression really, if not a deep, overwhelming feeling of hopelessness? It totally fuels anxiety because if you believe you have no control, then of course the world seems like a terrifying, unpredictable place. It keeps people trapped in phobias because that belief of I can't handle it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It creates this vicious downward spiral. Feeling helpless makes you act passive, and acting passive leads to more bad outcomes, which then just reinforces your original belief that you were helpless to begin with. And I really need you to hear this part. This is not a life sentence. This is not where the story ends. The single most hopeful, most powerful, most beautiful part of this whole idea is right there in the name. Learned helplessness. Because anything that is learned can be unlearned.
If one set of experiences can teach our brains to give up, then a new set of experiences can teach it to have hope again. This is where we start to take the power back. This is the truth at the heart of it all. Your brain is not set in stone. It's flexible. It learned its way into this pattern, and with some conscious effort, it can learn its way out. The whole journey is about challenging that old faulty data that says, I can't, and starting to collect new evidence that says, oh wait, I can. It's about reclaiming your sense of personal agency, that fundamental human belief that your choices matter, that you have a voice, and that your actions can actually shape your life.
So, how do we actually do this? Well, there are proven ways. Therapy, especially something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is literally designed for this. A therapist can help you become a detective for your own thoughts, to catch that pessimistic story as it's happening and challenge it. You learn to change I'm a failure to I failed at this one thing, so what can I try differently? Self-care is also huge. It's not about being indulgent. It's about proving you have control. Every time you choose to go for a walk or cook a healthy meal, you are performing a small, successful act of control over your own life. These are the small wins that start to rewire your brain. And finally, social support. You don't have to do this alone. Leaning on friends, family, a support group, that can be a lifeline. Sometimes just hearing someone else say, I believe in you, is what you need to start believing in yourself again.
So really, the ultimate goal isn't to just be blindly positive or pretend that bad things don't happen. They do. The goal is to change your entire relationship with adversity. It's about building a new mental skill, a new habit, that Martin Seligman himself called learned optimism. It's the active choice to see a setback not as a sign that you're a terrible person and things will be bad forever, but as a temporary, specific challenge that you actually have the strength to face. It's about learning to tell yourself a better, more truthful story. And that brings us back to the end. I want you to go back to that image of the shuttle box for a second. Think about that dog who didn't even try to jump because it just didn't believe it was possible. Now look at your own life. What is one small wall, one tiny barrier in front of you right now? It doesn't have to be some huge life-changing thing. Maybe it's just finally sending that one email you've been putting off. Maybe it's cleaning one small corner of your desk. Maybe it's just making your bed. What is one small, concrete thing you can do today to prove to that old, tired part of your brain that it's wrong? What's one small jump you can make right now to show yourself that your actions do matter? Because that's how this starts. That's how you unlearn helplessness. That's how you remember you're free. One small jump at a time.